Yeah, what's happening? We about to bring that action. Gotta hold it down for my Seattle Kraken. Hey, we going beneath the waves. We going beneath the waves. Get it hype, step onto the ice. Ready for some action. Release the Kraken. Hey, we going beneath the waves. Going beneath the waves.
Welcome, everyone, to the Beneath the Waves podcast, your weekly source of all things Seattle Kraken and beyond. I'm Derek.
I'm Heather.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Matt.
We've got an absolutely great show for you this week, including all the Kraken news coming off the trade deadline, a breakdown of last week's games, a check-in with Coachella Valley, and we'll take a look around the hockey world in the sound table. Heather, why don't you let us know what's happened this week with the Seattle Kraken?
All right. Well, we have quite a bit of news this week. I'm going to run through all the news, and then we're going to talk about trades, and we're going to kind of have a discussion around it because there's just so much to talk about. But I do want to start with some injuries just because I think it's still relevant to know. Last time in our podcast, we were talking about Yanni Gourde potentially coming off IR, and he was practicing, and he was actually activated off IR on March 4th, and he did play in the game against the Wild, and that was it for Yanni Gourde because we'll talk about the trade in a second. But good for Yanni getting back, being healthy. That's about all that is. I want to talk about Jordan Eberle just really briefly because Darren Brown from Sound of Hockey had this amazing article he did about Eberle's injury. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I think go and read it because it was so eye-opening and such a vulnerable article for Eberle to share all the details about what happened to him. But basically, where the right and left parts of his pubis bone connect, they became loose, and so there was no structural integrity for his lower body. So he couldn't lift his legs, which is terrifying. And basically this injury was so he didn't, slam into the boards with his head and neck. So super insane. Surgery required a plate being screwed into the bones to reconnect both sides. And what was interesting too is that he had reached out to hockey players and football players alike, and no one had this surgery or injury. So he had to talk to rugby players. So I kind of love that because they're so rough and tumble that they were like, oh yeah, of course we've had people that had that. So he talked to them that had successful surgeries this way, and that's basically how he decided to make the decision to do the surgery. So definitely go to soundofhockey.com and read that article from Darren because it was just really eye-opening to me how really, truly wild this injury was and how amazing it is that he came back from this. A couple other of just brief little milestone news. Adam Larson recorded his 50th NHL goal against the Nashville Predators, and Chandler Stevenson had his 100th NHL goal against the Flyers. So cool little milestones. We love those. Shout out to those guys because it's amazing to think that, you can be in the hockey world for that long and have that many goals. And I think that's cool. So let's go on to our roster moves. So I'm going to talk about the trades because obviously we just passed the trade deadline and we had quite a few moves that happened. On March 5th, we had what I think is probably our biggest trade, biggest news. Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand were traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay received Seattle's 2026 fifth round pick. Kraken retained half of Gourde's salaries, and the Kraken also received Michael Eyssimont and a Tampa Bay 2026 first-round pick, a Tampa Bay 2027 first-round pick, and a Toronto 2025 second-round pick. So, honestly, great trade. We'll talk about it in a sec, but wow. Kind of rocked us a little bit just that it was both of them, but really great. Good on Ron Francis. On trade deadline, which was March 7th, Brandon Tanev was traded to Winnipeg for a second-round pick in 2027, and Daniel Sprong was traded to New Jersey for a seventh-round pick in 2026. So I'm going to get everyone's take on that, but just really briefly, I want to talk about the Coachella moves that were kind of corresponding that. So we did call up Jacob Melanson and Ben Myers. And Ben Myers, it's funny, he had just been sent down when Yanni was activated off IR. So it was kind of like he had to come right back up. We're familiar with Ben Myers. He's been around, super solid player, but we were all really excited for Jacob Melanson to come up. He was actually out of the Coachella lineup for a significant amount of time this season with a lower body injury. So he is healed, he's battled back, and he's a really great player. So this was super well for him. Ty Cartier is also back from his conditioning stint. Kale Fleury was called back up. And then on trade deadline day, the Kraken made some additional moves to make sure they had eligible players for the AHL Calder Cup playoffs. So Ben Myers, Jacob Melanson, and Kale Fleury were all sent back down. Some of those were paper moves because we want to make sure they can play in the playoffs once the Kraken season is done. But Kale Fleury is still up. And then John Hayden was also called up to be a fourth liner since we kind of moved that line completely away. So super fun trade deadline, if you call it that. A little bit stressful. I did some online retail therapy to survive that day. But before I give my thoughts, because I feel like I always give my thoughts first, but I'd love to hear what you all have to say about these trades and what you thought.
I'll go first. I definitely think, obviously, with Gordon Tanev, firstly, that was something that we all expected. And because they were expiring this year, I really don't like, if you're not planning on re-signing that player, to hold them and lose them for nothing in free agency. And to think that, moving Gord might have contributed to one of those 2 first-round picks we got in that trade is pretty remarkable. The draft capital that we have right now is pretty remarkable. And I'm very excited about moving those 3 players. Bjorkstrand, obviously, he had one more year after this year. And, he was our all-star last year, but he wasn't playing at a level where he's like unmovable or anything by any means. I mean, we had a running joke. I know I did with Heather while we were watching a lot of the games last year and this year, where it's like, where's Bjorkstrand at? Like, it's very easy to miss him if you're not locking in. And yeah, I talked to one of my friends about Bjorkstrand. He said he's been losing a lot of puck battles lately. Just kind of goes out there a little whimsical. Did see his goal from Gord with Tampa Bay though, so that's pretty cool. But I'm feeling pretty good about these trades.
Now, let me preface, I really do like the asset management that we were able to bring back in these trades. Getting 2 first-round draft picks and a second for an expiring Yanni Gord who hasn't played, part of the season, and Oliver Bjorkstrand is simply astounding. I didn't expect that whatsoever. My initial expectation for Yanni Gord was going to be a second-round pick, especially with all the injuries. You throw in Bjorkstrand and you pull out 2 first-round picks. That's Michael Esimount. I'm going to Esimount. Okay, there's a brutally butchering that, but here we go.
Like Canada,
Esimount. Okay, all righty. But in regards to that trade, I'm happy with it. You're going to get a lot of draft capital. So that's a positive, and I think this team definitely needs to look at the draft capital. We're going to continue on this conversation because of a certain Ron Francis. So that was I was really happy with that. Brandon Tanev trade is 100% a win in my books. I think a lot of us were expecting a 3rd or a 4th round draft pick because he's a fourth liner and he's got a $3.5 million salary, and the fact that we didn't even retain that is incredible to say the least. So getting a 2027 second round pick is simply great. And then sending a AHL legend Daniel Sprong back to the Devils, which is like so perfect just because of his comments and whatnot. Now he's literally in hell. It's perfect. Getting a 7th round pick, it is what it is. We sent conditions to get him, and now we got a 7th round pick. So I'm pretty happy with that. Overall, I was hoping for maybe one more trade. I was really hoping that we could maybe ship off Jamie Olesiak. Not saying that he's a bad player, but it was a seller's market. And you kind of see what was going this year at the deadline. Carlo going to Toronto for, I believe it was a conditional first, and Fraser Mitten. Oh, I would have loved to, bring that type of a trade prospect back for Jamie Olesiak, but it is what it is. Clearly, the Kraken have other ideas when it comes to some of their, players with contract. So it is what it is. I can't fault the Kraken for how they traded this deadline. They were active, and they brought back that trade capital. So I have to give them like a good solid 8 out of 10. Was kind of hoping for more, but yeah, overall quite happy with it.
Overall, I'd say that I'm quite happy with how the deadline played out for our Seattle Kraken. When you compare this with last year, when our only move was trading away Alexander Wemberg, it was truly an exciting couple of days, albeit kind of nerve-wracking at times, wondering what was going to happen and when. I'm a big fan of the free space that we've opened up in our cap to make some room for the likes of Riker and Kako. Hopefully we can get those guys inked to new deals soon. The pickup of Mikey Asimont, I wasn't really super excited about seeing that name. Like, I wasn't getting too hyped about it, but seeing him score in his first game with the team made a pretty solid first impression for me, I'd say. Losing the likes of Yanni Gourde and Brandon Tanev didn't come as a huge shock because us and really the internet at large has been talking about this from the start of the season, just wondering when it was going to happen, if it was by the trade deadline or when free agency came around. But the Bjorkstrand one, I will admit, stung a little bit. It was nice to see them both contribute to the game-winning goal in their first game with Tampa, and they seem like they're having a good time there. Now, as far as Daniel Sprong goes, it's just a big good riddance for me. I never really cared that he came down, and I definitely was soured on him with some of the comments that he made while in Coachella Valley. Seeing Ron Francis actually move some players around and load up on these picks is promising for the future, provided he actually does something with them, so we'll wait and see there. I'm not a huge fan of the vague promise of we might take some of these picks, but we also might not. You'll just have to wait and see. Let's just buckle up. We'll ride out the rest of this season and see if any wild shenanigans take place at the draft or in free agency. And with all this new cap space we've acquired, or what Firebirds might be given a shot, especially in the tail end of the season. We saw earlier that it's likely that Yanni Neiman might come up to join the Kraken by the end of the season, and that's something that I am really excited to see.
For me, it's so hard to lose the OG players, like Gordon Tanev. Like, those are rough, even when it's a good business decision, which I get. Like I said, I'm thrilled. I think what came back for Gordon Bjorkstrand specifically is incredible. Like, my God, that's amazing. Like, hats off to Ron for that one, because I was not sure, especially with Gord not having played and being coming off the injury. It's like, you never know. So I think that was really masterful. Really great job. Obviously, I'm going to miss some of them, especially Gordon Tanev on the penalty kill. Like, that first game without them both, it was a little rough. So that part is hard. But you know what? That's what the business is all about, right? We're bringing in new people. We're going to bring up some of the young people and let them fill those roles and become those people that are going to be pains. And, Jacob Melanson, while he is back down in Coachella now, he's one of those that will come up and be gritty and be a fighter and be a pest. And I'm excited for that. So we do have some good, future people. And then, on top of that, it's really nice to know we have a bunch of these draft pieces that we can potentially turn into players too. Like, I'm excited for that, which, I think we have to talk about Ron Francis's press conference and what he talked about on KHN, which was very similar today. But I too was a little surprised that there wasn't one more done. Like, I did think about Alexiak, but I know Ron said he wasn't interested in moving any additional players with term. I think that's what it came down to. But I was a little bit surprised because I thought he would definitely be one of the ones hitting the road. But, I think with Ron, let's get to the press conference because I know we have a lot of things to say about that. A couple of things that he said. He's saying this is not a rebuild, that we think we have a lot of pieces in place and we think we're a lot closer than maybe some people think we are. So I think this is the really big piece that we want to talk about. So before you two get into it, because I'm scared about this, I'm going to say what I think real quick, and then I'll come back and I will mediate if needed. But, for me, I get it. He was saying it was 5.5 games away from hitting the playoffs. And I understand that. I understand the numbers part of it. That makes sense. For me, though, I also think he's using injuries as a reason. He's saying, like, he went to say, like, injuries were the reason, but injuries were not the reason. And I have a hard time with that part of the press conference, too. You can't expect a team to be completely healthy like it was for our first playoff run. Like, we were so healthy, like amazingly, miraculously healthy, right? So I think you have to think about that. And I also think it's not taking into consideration other factors of the team, like lack of shots on net, like defensive breakdowns, and Joey having this otherworldly season. Like, those are things too we have to consider when we're talking about that. And I'm not saying he's wrong to look at, like, hey, we were kind of close, but I do think maybe I have a little skepticism just because I worry he's pandering to ownership a bit. But overall, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. Like, we're in this position and I just have to let it play out, right? Because it could be really amazing what he does in the offseason. I hope. that's what I want to see happen, is turn these draft picks into some players maybe, but I also think let's not get rid of all of them. Let's draft some defense because we need it. Let's do all the things because we have that in our hands right now. So I'm okay also with having growing pains over the next few years if means we're going to build something solid, right? So like it could go either way. I'm just hoping that they're thinking long term and not just next season. I guess that's where I land, just think a little bit more long term. But I'm gonna let you two have it out. I saw both of you were tweeting the same thing on Twitter, but like different takes. So I'm thrilled to see what you guys have to say about this.
Where do I begin? While I appreciate what Francis has done in the trade deadline, the comments that he made during the press conference, in my opinion, was a general manager trying to save his own ass. And he's trying to appease the ownership because ownership is in this realm of, this realm where they believe that we are a playoff contending team. The last time I checked, we are one of the worst teams in the NHL. So you have Ron Francis, really sitting here saying we are this close to securing a playoff spot. Like 5.5 wins, okay, we can debate that, till the cows come home. But there's so many other layers to why we are this far back, though. We lack defensive awareness. We have one great goalie, but we've lacked, having a solid backup. We, our offense hasn't been good. We can talk about that one year that everything decided to go in, but this team doesn't shoot the puck. How many times every single year have we talked about, oh man, this team needs to get more shots on net. Okay, we're finished the second period. This team has 10 shots on net. How are we, what's going on? I don't think a simple, we have a couple, we have extra draft picks. We're going to trade these, these picks off for what, mid-level players. Like, this is the problem that I have with these comments, because what I see, I understand Francis's vision, but I also have a big problem with saying, we're going to trade these picks for insert player. Our team is very much filled with mid-level talent. The best way to get high-end talent is through the draft. You need to develop. You need to be patient. The ownership is very much in this, in the boat of, we are struggling, our sales are going down, our season tickets are suffering, the Supersonics could be coming back very soon. There's so much things up in the air, and they're going, we need to stay relevant. And in order to stay relevant, playoffs need to be happening. But the big truth of the matter is, sure, we can, trade a couple players, trade a couple picks, get a couple players here and there. You're just plugging holes. You're not really fixing the core problem, where this team doesn't have an identity. This team struggles with a lot of issues, starting in the offensive zone, the defensive zone, and goaltending. Joey looks absolutely ragged, and that's because the team doesn't have a dependable backup goaltender. Grubauer had a great game in his last performance against Philadelphia, but that's his 6th win of the season. Like, you got to put it, when you look at the numbers. And so when I really look at, those comments made by Francis, I really do look at it as a general manager who's just trying to save himself at this point. Because, say Francis does go out, and trades a couple of these picks for promising players, or, players with term that have 50, 60 points. That's great. But I feel like we're going to end up in the same boat where we are right now. We brought in Stevenson, we brought in Montour. We're right up against the cap this season. We got rid of expiring contracts, but we're still going to run into a problem in years to come. Shane Wright's going to need an extension in a couple of years. Next season, we're looking at a Riker Evans contract. We're looking at a Capo Caco contract. The two of them right there is probably going to be $6 million plus. I'm going to say between 6 and 6.5 million for those two players. Francis mentioned $20 million that he has in free, in cap space. You take Riker Evans and you take Capo Caco's new extensions, you're looking at 13.5 million. It's not a lot to play with. And I think what you need to look at is, could we have traded a player like Jamie Olesiak? Could we have traded a player like Andre Burakovsky? But that wasn't going to happen. Absolutely. And if the opportunities were out there, maybe we should have taken it, because I don't believe this team is a add a couple players here and there, and we are back into this. I want this team to be a team every year competing for a playoff spot, not a wild card spot. And what I hear from Francis and from ownership is that we see ourselves as a playoff team, but when I see playoff team, I see it in quotation marks as we see ourselves as a wild card team. That's it. We're not a team that's going to actually compete for playoff position. We're going to be that team that's just on the edge, hoping we squeak into the playoffs. And I don't know about you both, but I want to see this team thrive. And I'm willing to deal with pain for 3 or 4 years of just absolute painful hockey. But if we can get top draft picks over the next couple years, I'm totally game for it. And for those of you who don't know, I was a Leaf fan for many years. I know what pain looks like. Believe me, it's worth the patience because I'm watching what the Leafs are doing right now, and they're a good team, and they struggled for many years. The Kraken could suffer for a couple years, and they could be a very successful team in the future. Get a couple of high-end draft picks, we'd be laughing, down the road. I just don't want the Kraken to panic mode, and I think that's what they're going to do this offseason, and that makes me stressed out. So I don't think what Francis said in the press conference really was, a positive for the team as a whole. I think it's more for let's appease ownership, and that's all I see of it.
Yeah, Alex, I agree with you that I do not want the Kraken to go into panic mode. My only difference is that I think that if we followed the years of pain, that would be going into panic mode. Selling everything, reducing the team to ashes is what I see as panic mode. And then secondly, Heather, I do want to say that I do agree that I am willing to go through some growing pains as well. Want to focus on the long term for sure, and not just next season because that would be bad. But I'm gonna summate my thoughts here. So in the NHL, there are roughly 6 to 8 elite teams, in my opinion, and about 6 poor teams. I would say right now the Kraken are one of those poor teams. The remaining teams, there's about 20 of them, fall into what I would call a mid category. Some fans, including some of the people here at BTW, are criticizing Ron Francis for aiming to move the Kraken from a bottom tier team to one of those 20 mid teams. But that criticism, in my opinion, is misguided. First, let's acknowledge reality. We don't know better than 20 GMs in the league. If most teams outside the top and bottom 6 are mid, then logically, the goal should be to escape the bottom tier and join that competitive middle group, which is exactly what Francis was saying, and that's where playoff contention is within reach. We've already seen how random variance in hockey works. A mid-level team can defeat the defending Stanley Cup champions in a 7-game series. They can take the Dallas Stars to a 7-game series and be 2 goals away from going to the Western Conference Finals. Call it a fluke or not, call it firing on all cylinders or not, but that unpredictably is part of hockey. The obsession with a perfect process and tearing the team down to rebuild from scratch, in my opinion, is a dangerous mindset and one that risks turning a team into a perennial AHL level squad for years to come. Yes, this team has promising prospects. I do agree with that, but they are just that, prospects. Even top tier prospects don't always develop into reliable NHL players, into even mid NHL players. Many teams that strip their roster for draft picks find themselves years down the road with a roster full of players that are just as mid or worse than the players that they stripped for those picks. There are only so many elite players in the league, and they're consolidated onto like a couple teams, and the overall talent pool isn't deep enough to expect that going through that 4 to 5 years of absolute misery will necessarily guarantee success. I agree with you though, Alex, that if we could guarantee success, I would absolutely go through that 4 to 5 years of like misery. I don't think most fans would, but I would, guaranteed. The smarter approach, in my opinion, is to retain players who have already proven they can contribute at the NHL level while trimming weaknesses or the fat and retooling for a playoff push. There's zero evidence that reducing the team to ashes, scorched earth, will necessarily lead to a better outcome. It's an assumption based on intuition. I don't think it's based on facts. To believe in that approach so strongly that you'd shame our glorious GM, Ronnie Franchise, and by extension, the other 19 to 20 teams GMs that are in this mid category for taking a similar route is misguided. If there were a perfect formula for building an elite team, every team would follow it, and we wouldn't see franchises stuck in decade-long rebuilds. The reality is that constructing a winning team takes patience. This isn't NHL 25 franchise mode. You can't just reset and expect immediate success. So that's what I was saying about your panic mode. That's why I think this is panic mode. Ultimately, myself, I'd rather watch a competitive mid-tier team similar to what we've had like in the first or mainly the second year, with a legitimate shot at the playoffs. So shoring up that gap of the 6.5 games, 5.5 games, or whatever. Then a bottomed out AHL level squad struggling to put up points. Think about like the Coyotes, who have now started to develop with Utah, but the Sharks, the Blackhawks, the Sabres, the Ducks. A lot of these teams have had like first, second, third overall picks for years and nothing. Like they're just still bad. I agree it's an option, and it's an option we could take. I just don't think it allows us to even have a shot at the playoffs, which I don't like. Like my favorite part is making the playoffs, and I also just don't think it guarantees getting better even. Like you might just stay the same or get worse.
Okay, so we are currently projected to have 75 points. Ironically, I said 76 points. Do you really expect, and this is okay, I'm going to kind of go back to this because this is where I really think about this as, do you trust, and before you answer, I kind of want to explain everything. Do you trust Ron Francis to lead this team moving forward when it comes to creating a roster? Now, let me just put it into a perspective. Okay, you're hired on as a new role, it's brand new. You can, pick your own employees. You're going to be creating this new brand of whatever you want to think about it. You get all control. So you pick all these, you hire all these people. The first year it's rough. We understand it. Things happen. It is what it is. Upper management ownership is like, okay, don't worry about it. It's your first year. We understand it's going to be a rough patch. The second year comes in, and you blow it out of the water. It's shocking. It's incredible. Everyone can't believe how well you did. You surprised everybody. And the owners are like, okay, like, wow, we are the real deal here. We really do trust you. Your third year comes in, you absolutely, stink the bed. It's bad, it's terrible, and ownership's like, okay, what the heck? Like, what happened last season? So then, all of a sudden, you are in a panic. You, who were given the range, you did what you could, you brought everybody in. That second year, you exceeded expectations. So that third year, and you did terrible that third year. So, while you're kind of compiling all that information, you're going like, okay, I got to bring in a couple new hires. And I'm just going to throw the money at them because at this point, I believe firmly that these players, these employees, are going to get us over the line here. Your fourth year comes into play, and not only do these players not take you over the line, it brings you down further than expected from the year previously. Now let's put this in hockey terms. You're Ron Francis. This is exactly what happened to Ron Francis. You were given the keys to the city. You crafted this team. You crafted the identity of this team. That second season, we can call it a fluke. We can call it whatever you want. It happened. Fan base is like, we expect better. Third year, absolute train wreck. Panic mode ensues by Ron Francis, and I think we can consider what happened was a panic move. He signed both Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson to very long, very expensive contracts. Right now, it's working out, but it's not working out in the same way that we expected. Year 4 has come in. We are a horrible team. We are filled with mid-level players. We are trimming the fat, as you said. We got rid of Gord. We got rid of Tanev. We got rid of Bjorkstrand. We acquired assets. But now we're going into season 5. In a reality, in real life, because hockey isn't real life. These guys, they live in their own magical world. You would be fired in this type of situation. If you were hired, 4 years down the line, you were able to create this entire, team from scratch. And if it wasn't producing anything effectively by the 4th year, you'd be canned. And I kind of come back to this whole thing with Ron Francis, because I know he's going to be here in the offseason. I just don't trust him anymore. And this is where my key component of him stating, oh, we're going to, trade away these assets for players. And I'm like, buddy, you had 4 years to prove exactly what you can do. And sure, you've built up a great prospect pool. You've brought in a couple great players, but this team is not good. We can see it on paper. And, we've given you ample opportunities. So now we're in this position where Ron Francis is like, I think this team can do well. We're only 5.5 wins away from making, competing for a wild card spot. But when you look at it, you're like, Ron, you could have said that in year 3. You could have, in year 2, it was a fluke. And now you're in year 4. At the start of the season, you're like, we are a playoff team. Not only did you miss the boat, you're still unsure. Like you're still unsure. The boat is way off in the distance. You're not in the water. You're unsure. You're holding your ticket in the hand, being like, "Oh wow!" Like I totally misread the time of when the departure of this boat was leaving, and now ownership is like, "We trust you." Where the fan base, in my opinion, from what I've seen on online, is why are we still trusting this general manager with this team? Because he is going to be in a secondary panic mode this offseason. He was already in a panic mode. He was already in the hot seat last season. He's going to be even more like that. That's scorched earth type seat now, where does he make a couple stupid trades just to be like, we're going to be a playoff team. We're going to be a playoff team. It could hurt us even further down the line if those trades don't pan out. And we could be sitting here next year at the same time being like, well, we traded X, Y, and Z. We traded away 2 picks, maybe in the first round or even in the second round, and we are in the same exact position.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my biggest concern. And that's my concern is that like, we can talk about all the hypotheticals that we want, but
right.
at the end of the day, we're trusting someone who has been given ample options. And I think right now where I'm standing is like, I can't get behind it. Yeah. Because it's like I just can't. It's too many times that we've given him an opportunity to prove himself, and he just hasn't. Because we're sitting here year 4, and we are one of the worst teams in the league. We're going to be drafting top 5, and we're going to be, instead of looking at players to draft who could be all-stars, who could just be mid-tier players, we don't know, but we're looking at trading them away for who, like. And that's the thing. Like, who's going to become available this offseason that we're going to be like bona fide star? Because that's what we're missing. We're missing a bona fide star. And I don't think a first round draft pick and maybe a prospect or 2 is going to get us that. Because as much as I appreciate our prospect pool, it's not a grade A prospect pool. I would put it maybe in a B minus pool. And I don't think 2 first round picks and 2 of our prospects are going to pull in one of those bona fide stars that we need on this team. And that's just kind of where I'm sitting at.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of your concern with Ron going forward, like you said in year 5, I think we should sort of slow it down. I know Matt said that he's saying that we should just, buckle up, ride out the rest of the season, see if any other wild things happen. I am only evaluating him right now on the recent trade and what he said at the press conference. And I don't even know if Ron Francis is necessarily the guy. If you want to say that we should fire Ron Francis, that's fine. I'm more concerned with taking a rebuild approach. I think we should try to stay towards this middle category as closely as possible so that with variance, with a high shooting percentage, with good goaltending, we can make the playoffs even while we're upgrading. That's like the whole point of the retool, is that you're still able to win games while you're upgrading the team. And I agree that we've been bad, and I think everybody in the fan base agrees we've been bad. But I think that it's smarter to upgrade incrementally with smart moves. And I mean, this offseason, once we're talking about those moves, then I'll be like down to talk to you like about whether or not Ron is making a good move. But right now, I think he's setting us up for a good offseason. I think he's setting us up for a good next year. And then in terms of, I wanted to go back to what you said in your first statement about the cap. I know the cap is going up a bunch. So I know you said we're probably only be working with like 14 mil, but with the Shane Wright extension down the road, the cap will be going up more. So hopefully that is good. Obviously, that's a concern of mine too, but I agree. Hopefully that's good in the future. And then I wanted to touch on one more thing. And it was like almost like hoping to strike gold through the draft while like tearing up your whole team. I don't want to do that because I feel like it could be, like I said, 6 to 10 years of just no wins at all, even less chance of winning right now than right now, and you're just drafting every year trying to strike gold, whereas we don't know if you're going to. A lot of teams have done this, like I said, Sharks, Coyotes. So that's pretty much I think where we are.
You know
If we
what's
want to move
actually
on.
funny is you guys are kind of saying the same thing in a lot of ways, just different ways of getting to the same position, sort of. Like, I don't think anyone wants to take the team completely down to like bare bones. Like neither of you are saying that. What we're saying is what's the actual direction that we're going to be moving into? That's the question, and I don't know that we're going to know that until we see what happens in the off season. But I think it's kind of like Alex doesn't want Ron to continue saying we're a playoff team, we're a playoff team, we're a playoff team when we're going to get our hearts broken again, right? Like we don't want that. And Derek, you don't want to sit there and be like, okay, let's get rid of
Abandon
everything.
everything. Yeah.
And let's stick in this mid category while we're improving.
My main take, ain't nothing wrong with being mid. Okay, you could sum it up like that. Ain't nothing wrong with being mid. And also, I would say Ron didn't say we're a playoff team. He said we're 5.5 games out of being a
out of
playoff
it.
team.
Yeah.
So...
But I do think that the insinuation there though is that he expects a playoff team next season, right? So Alex,
so
what you said, of course, we want that. But Alex, what you said about like, is he going to make some stupid trades in order to get to that point? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but with Montour and Stevenson, while maybe we love them, maybe they were great this season, was that just to try to make the playoffs this season? And then it didn't happen. You know what I mean?
That was just enough to squeak into the playoffs.
Yep.
Like that wasn't we're going to be a top contending
100%.
team. That was like we're going to sneak in 3 points in a wild card spot. That was it.
100%. So will he do that again? That's the thing, right? Like, are we going to see that?
I'm trying to sneak into that wild card spot. That's my take. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. So that's the thing, right? So you're okay with that. Alex is like, let's go playoffs. Like, if we're going to do this, like, let's wait a few years, build it up, and do playoffs, not just wild card. That's the difference. That's what you're both
100%.
saying, right?
The way that I look at it, and like you have to think about like who you're going to be playing in the playoffs. Like, would I love to play a team like Dallas? Would I love to play a team like Colorado, Vegas, you name it? But I don't want to go into the playoffs every single year as a wild card team facing the best team in the division or the best team in the conference and just get absolutely destroyed every year, because that starts to wear on you. Because if 3-4 seasons of the same thing, you're going to be like, what's the point? We're going to go into the playoffs. We're going to compete, but we might lose in 5. We might lose in 6, like we have in the last couple of years. But I will understand, because that second year when we beat Colorado and we almost took Dallas out, absolutely, that was great. That's playoff hockey. It's incredible. But at the same time, you can only get lucky so many times. And that's where I kind of stand on that, because we can only get lucky so many times. And I don't think the Kraken are going to be able to do that year on year on year.
Yeah. I agree. Could we agree and put a bow on this with this? Could we all agree on this? That we all want the Kraken to get better every year, and that it's fine for them to get better in incremental change.
You're just trying to get us all to your side, Derek.
With a stabilization and not scorched earthing it. I agree that if there are bad, we should not make bad.
Nobody wants to scorch earth.
That's the thing. That's not what Alex is saying, though. That's the difference.
Right.
He's not saying scorched earth. He just
we just don't want bad moves. We don't want bad moves that'll saddle us for the future.
Yes.
So we all agree we don't want bad moves that'll saddle us for the future, and we all want incremental good change, year over year.
Positive change in whatever shape or form. Like if that means, okay, we're going to struggle, but we're going to get that first overall draft pick, and it's Gavin McKenna, then 100%. Like I don't care. If we are able to sign Mitch Marner in the offseason, I don't think that's going to happen. But like, is that going to make the team better? Sure as hell it will. Right. I don't want that to happen because I don't think that's good for the team in the long run.
I agree. No bad moves.
No bad moves. Don't make a stupid move where a player becomes available and Francis is like 7 years, $15 million.
Yeah.
Because
are we all fine? Are we all fine trying to make the playoffs next year as long as we don't make bad moves that'll settle us down for the future? Or no?
I'm fine with them trying to make the playoffs every goal horn year. But but the thing is, though, I just think we have to be smart about our expectations around it, and so does management, and so does ownership. And right now, ownership does not have the right expectations in my eyes. I don't know, but I think they don't.
What I was going to say is, would I love the Kraken to make the playoffs next year or fight for a playoff spot? 100%. But I can't tell you exactly how I'm feeling right now because I haven't seen what moves have been made this offseason.
Agree with that too.
That is pivotal.
That's a can that we can kick down the road.
100%.
Exactly.
Be a great discussion in the summer.
Echoing what Heather said, what ownership is saying and what the management is saying is two completely different things to what fans are seeing on the ice. What
Yes.
fans are seeing on the ice is a lackluster, boring, deflating hockey team that can't win games and is not a playoff team, doesn't show up for 60 minutes. And what ownership and management is saying is we are 5.5 games away from a wild card spot, but we know as fans that we are very far away from a wild card spot because there are so many underlying errors and issues with this team that need to be resolved before we even look at playoffs.
Yep. I think let's put a pin in that until the off season, and let's see what happens. Let's see what Ron does, because I'm assuming Ron, because I think we would know by now if it was not Ron. I mean, I just think that he's the guy right now. So let's see what he does. Maybe he will surprise us and draft amazingly. Maybe somebody really cool will come in the off season available. Put my goal horn there. I saved it. And we'll get that person, right?
Like, I like how you said goal horn the first time.
I know. I should have used it there instead, but but let's see what happens. That's all we can do, I think, right now, right?
Yeah, I think we pretty much all agree.
Yeah.
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are property of the NHL and its teams. Copyright NHL 2025, all rights reserved.
All right, now after that amazing heated discussion, I'm going to break down the Kraken's performance this week. First, we had Game 62, and that was at home versus the Minnesota Wild. We lost 4-3. Then there was Game 63 at the Nashville Predators. We lost 5-3. Then there was Game 64 at the Philadelphia Flyers. We won 4-1. And then there was Game 65, which was today, as of the day of recording, against the Washington Capitals, where we lost 4-2. Heather, if you want to start us off with your talking points for this week, what were you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, so the two games we lost, I think just more situations where they were down too far to climb back up, really. Like that's sort of a theme. So no surprise there. But I will say it's funny because in the Wild game, I feel like in the third and maybe the end of the second, they did gain control of the game, but it just kind of was too little too late. Like they actually looked pretty good. I was noticing, maybe that was the first game I was really noticing some wear and tear with Joey. Like I just really felt like he was really struggling in that one. Sort of a more rough game for him, but you know, he's just playing so many games. So just that one was rough. The Predators game, that's when Brandon Tanev was actually held out for trade-related reasons. So that was kind of an interesting one. Gord was already gone. So like the PK did suffer that night until they kind of figured it out. Jacob Melanson looked good though for his NHL debut. Like, you couldn't really ask for much more with him. He's gritty. He was making hits. He was in the middle of a scrum at one point. He almost had a goal himself. He set up Adam Larson, like really great. Really excited for that. And then for the new guy, Mikey, to get a goal as a Kraken, that's cool too. Love that. The Flyers game. Okay, so first of all, when they gave up a goal in the last like 40 seconds of the first period, I audibly groaned. I was like, oh my gosh. But they did really turn it around. Grubauer had a great game. He had a great game. He looked really sharp. Yes, he did. He had a great game. He saved 23 of 24 shots. By the way, his last win was on my birthday, December 30th. That's how long it had been since he won an NHL game. So like good for Grubauer. I want to see him do well. It was nice to see Cartier back to get a goal too. Like happy for that. It was a pretty fun game to watch, and I think that's what we're kind of leaning towards too, which is the Capitals game too. They had a good fast start in the first, and then the Capitals turned it around because that's what they do, right? They came out in the second, and they were ready to swing. But I think overall it was fun though. Like the fight was fun. We love a Shane Wright goal. All of that was really fun. Adam Larson is on a 4-game point streak. That's also cool for him. And just as another side note, that's kind of odd, but we're 0 for 10 on the second of back-to-back games. So not super fun there. But this was a fun game today, though, against the Capitals. I think that's what I'm holding on to is just the fun moments, the fun games.
Yeah. From the first 2 games, the 2 losses, all I ever really have to say is just kind of crazy. Losing to the Predators, how bad they've been this year. But I just think that's icing on the cake for the season. But yeah, the last 2 games of the week, super fun. Love my boy Philly Grustate getting back in the net and then having 3 expected goals against and only allowing 1. Like, what is that? That is unreal. Like, this guy had like Alex, like an 85 save percentage in Coachella a couple weeks ago. Like, what?
Yep.
So maybe some good news for Gru. Hopefully some development into next year, along with maybe Matty Beniers and some other folks to get our team on track. Anyway.
Development.
And then okay. And then with the game today, really just one of the most fun losses of the year, I would say. Just watching it, just like, wow, this game is so fun. Maybe it's just to know that the team is doing things to improve. I'm able to view it with like this like new aura where it's like I'm not gloomy. I'm not like, oh, this team never does anything. It's like, oh, okay, now we traded away some actual fan favorites and stuff, and like we can start moving. Pretty fun. Fight was pretty fun. We actually had 4.34 expected goals to Washington's 2.86. Really unfortunate game today. We kind of dominated a lot of it. Like there was a point in time where it was like 28 to 14 shots Kraken. Just kind of an unreal game. But I'm really upset with the Kraken coaching staff for pulling Joey Accord and giving Ovechkin another free goal. Okay, earn that thing, bro. Earn that thing. I'm so tired of it. I watched the Washington versus Seattle game in Seattle, and I saw one firsthand. No bueno.
So in regards to my talking points for these games, wild game, I ripped Adam Larson a new one saying that the contract extension was terrible, and literally as I finished that sentence, he scored. So that was
that was you guys are streaming that game, right? I had to miss
that
one.
So we were streaming that game. So
that.
By the way, thanks for joining, everyone. Thanks for commenting, sharing, all that stuff. We appreciate you.
Yeah. So if anybody who wasn't there, myself and Matt and Derek were there, and I decided to open my big fat mouth and decided to say, that Adam Larson extension is terrible. Like, why would they do that? And I swear to God, I stopped talking. And as soon as I stopped talking, Adam Larson shot the puck and it went in the net. And Matt looked at me and says, well, that's getting clipped. And deservedly so. I deserve that one. The Predators game, the new guy, Simont, getting the goal. That's pretty awesome. I wanted him to get the number 1 goal, but him just scoring in general in a game that against the Predators, who are arguably one of the worst teams in the NHL this season. It is what it is. But at that time, I wasn't really too bothered about it. Like it sucked because when you're playing a bottom team, you expect some level of competitiveness, and we just didn't show that. So a little bit of frustrating there. Flyers game was fun. Like I had a blast watching it. Just shows you, Philip Grubauer, for everybody listening who knows that me, Kraken Canada, apparently has a vendetta against Philip Grubauer. That is entirely false. Grubauer had played one hell of a game. One hell of a game. I was very impressed with him. And, at the end of the day, like, buddy, you earned that 6th win of the season. Like, hats off to you, buddy. So I have zero complaints about that game. They played effectively and they played great. And then today's game was just fun. I got my first Sasquatch point, which I was very happy about because it's game 65. So like that kind of shows you,
And who was that guess of yours, Alex?
It was Shane freaking Wright. And that's who scored. And so there's that. And like I said, there's been 65 games. And the fact that I finally got a point is saying something. So I probably shouldn't be putting Joey Daccord as my guess ever again, because that was the issue. But then that fight, like the fact that like the 5 guys in the box at once, like that photo is going to be iconic for like Kraken Twitter from now on and just online. But like they actually showed some heart and some passion. Like that was the difference between today. Like it wasn't like one of those games where you're getting blown out of the water. Like we lost in the last little bit. It is what it is. If we play the rest of the season like that and we lose, I have no problem. It's the games that we just don't bother showing up that frustrate me the most. Like you make more money than some people could ever imagine. Play. And that's kind of where I kind of sit with that. Like if you come to the game and you work your ass off and you lose, it is what it is. But countering Derek's point, I love the fact that Alexander Ovechkin has scored 886 goals in his NHL career, and not one of them has been scored on the one and only Joey Daccord. So that's a cool feat to have. Like you got to admit, like that's a lot of goals, and he's played in the NHL for a long time, and he still hasn't scored on Joey. So Joey's got that in his back pocket. So those are my talking points for these games. Moving forward, we're gonna go south to a land of fire and desert. Yes, it's the Desert Dialogues. 2 games happened this week, both excellent games. So the first game we're going to be talking about is March 4th at the Calgary Wranglers in a 6-1 win. So just some highlights for this one. The Firebirds scored 4 goals in the first period. Ty Karche scored 2 of those 4. Jacob Melanson had 1, and David Goyette had the other. Ryan Witterton notched his 14th of the season, a shorthanded goal in the third period. Yanni Neiman got his 26th goal of the season to make the final score 6-1. Keep an eye on Yanni Neiman. He is going to be playing with the Kraken at some point in this final stretch. It's going to happen. So this was Coco's 16th win of the season, and he saved 19 of 20 shots. This game put the Firebirds into first place in the Pacific Division, and it was their 6th win in the last 7 games. So if you are a Kraken fan, I suggest 1,000,000% to get that subscription ready, because you're going to be wanting to watch Firebird AHL playoff hockey. It's going to be electric.
Yeah, they're so fun in the playoffs. They also played March 5th at the Calgary Wranglers. This was an 8-2 win. Amazing. I have to give details on this one because it was just wild. But first of all, they scored 7 goals in the second period. So when they scored 4 in the first in the last game, I was like, wow, that's cool. Then 7 in the second, and this one was just like amazing. It's a new franchise record. The old record was 5 goals in a period, so that's just incredible. I'm going to give a quick rundown of who scored these goals just because it's fun. It was Mitchell Stevens, then John Hayden, then Ty Nelson, then Ian McKinnon, who had already scored in the first period to tie the game 1-1. And then it was Daniel Sprong. So yes, you heard that correctly. Daniel Sprong not only got a hat trick, but a natural hat trick, because no one from either team scored between his 3 goals. Wranglers scored again in the third, but obviously too little too late at that point. So the final score was 8-2, but this kept the Firebirds at the top of the Pacific Division. They took all 4 points from the Calgary Wranglers, who had been at the top of the division all season, basically. It was win 7 in the past 8 games. And this was Victor Ostman's first AHL game and his first win. So I love that for him. That's really fun. And yeah, I think Ron Francis said that Yanni Newman's coming up, right? So
pretty much.
Yeah. If you do want to watch some Firebirds game this week, which I think you do, they play Wednesday, March 12th against the Colorado Eagles, Friday, March 14th at the Bakerfield Condors, and then Saturday, March 15th versus the Henderson Silver Knights. Our top Firebirds this week, we have somebody that you haven't heard a bunch of already. It's Yanni Newman with 41 points in his 54 games played. Logan Morrison has 34 points in his 55 games played, which is, it just shows you 41 to 34. Yanni Newman's just such a head above the rest at the moment. And then Ryan Winterton and Max Lejoie both have 31 points in 44 games played and 54 games played, respectively.
So some AHL standings. Coachella sits at the top of the Pacific Division with 70 points in 56 games, but it's close. Colorado Eagles are right behind them with 68 points in 53 games. The Wranglers are in third with 66 points in 57 games played, and the Ontario Reign have 66 points in 54 games played. It's going to come down to the wire. We've kind of been saying this the entire season, that where this division's absolutely insane. If you have a subscription, watch the rest of the season, because it's going to be fun. It's going to be electric. If you don't subscribe, you could probably find it for really cheap at this point. That comes with you get to watch playoffs at the same time. Highly recommend it. It's great hockey. If you're tired of watching Kraken hockey, this is actually meaningful hockey, and it's a lot of fun. And Yanni Neiman is going to be a star. He's coming up to the NHL, and we just got another Finnish connection there. So I'm so fired up.
And now we will head down to the sound table. Our weekly deep dive into all things outside of the Seattle Kraken organization around the hockey world. Starting off, obviously, with trade deadline. That was the big news topic this week. So I have a couple just rapid-fire trade deadline moves here and some notes with them, and I'll get your thoughts on them after I lay these all out. So we got to start with the big two. Probably the most shocking one, Brad Marchand from the Bruins to the Panthers. This is one of the last announcements of the day that was pending when the deadline closed and was announced soon after, absolutely rocking many fan bases. Bruins fans were in shambles. It was absolutely kind of fun to watch. Mikko Rantanen was the other big one, and he made the move from the Hurricanes to the Stars. A fun note on this one is that forward Jack Roslovic has switched his jersey back to 96 with Mikko Rantanen leaving, which he vacated for Rantanen when he came in exchange for a Rolex. So I think at the end of the day, Jack Roslovic is absolutely the biggest winner of the trade deadline day. Also related to 96 on a jersey, the Carolina Pro Shop at the Hurricanes Lenovo Center made an announcement today on Twitter that if you purchased a Rantanen jersey and bring it in with proof of purchase, they will replace the nameplate on it for free. So I think it looks like there's going to be a whole lot more Roslovic jerseys up in the stands. Some other moves around the league, we had Brock Nelson going from the Islanders to the Avalanche. Charlie Coyle and Casey Middlestat swap places between the Bruins and the Avs. A couple former Kraken moved as Carson Soucy goes from the Canucks to the Rangers. Brian Dumoulin heads from the Ducks to the Devils. And Kraken legend Vitek Vanacek is now with the Panthers, coming over from the Sharks. And another former Kraken move, we have Chris Drieger, who is now up in his hometown of Winnipeg playing for the Jets. Luke Schenn of the Nashville Predators was traded for Michael Bunting of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then Schenn was then moved to Winnipeg in a follow-up deal. And those are kind of the big ones that I thought we wanted to touch on here. Now I'm curious what your thoughts and takeaways were from this very exciting trade deadline couple days.
Actually, one of the trades I really want to talk about is the Brad Marchand going to the Florida Panthers, because everything about this is wrong. Brad Marchand is Boston. Like, the way I always view Brad Marchand is a Boston Bruin. Anything else is extremely weird. It's either he's wearing the Bruins jersey or a Team Canada jersey. There's nothing else. The fact that he's going to a division rival in the Florida Panthers and for a conditional second round pick is odd in every way. And if you haven't gone on Twitter, go to Boston Twitter because they're mad. They're furious. They're angry. And it's the most ironic part about this whole thing is the Rat is going to the city that literally throws rats on the ice. It was a match made in heaven, but I will say I am excited to watch Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, and Bennett line. Like that makes me so excited. Like that, if you want the Bash brother like line, that is what you get there. And I'm so excited on that.
Yeah, that trade is so wild to me. It like squeaked into at the end of the trade deadline. So the rumors had been flying all day, right? And then I was like, oh, it's not really happening. And then last second, it was like, oh, there it is. I'm still in shock because, like you said, I can't picture him playing anywhere else. Like it just doesn't seem right. But yeah, I don't know. To me, that's like the biggest trade of the season, the deadline, I think, just because it's so insane. But yeah, I don't know. It's to a division rival is the part that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I can't get over that one. So yeah, insane.
The second trade I kind of want to talk about because it's very interesting is the Mikko Rantanen trade, going from Hurricanes to the Stars. I think it's a huge failure on the Carolina Hurricanes part of this because you gave up a lot to acquire Rantanen. You should have tried to secure an extension before the trade actually happened. So the fact that you had to trade him again mid-season is such a catastrophic failure for the Carolina Hurricanes and their upper management. Dallas is going if Dallas doesn't win the cup this year, I will be shocked because they're absolutely stacked. Two parts I do want to talk about this is Jack Roslovic is the winner. He switched his jersey number for Rantanen, got a Rolex, and then went back to the number again. So Buddy gave up his number for like 16 games, got a Rolex and went back. I think that's amazing. And second is information came out today, which is Sunday, where the Toronto Maple Leafs were actually talking to Carolina about Rantanen. The Hurricanes wanted Mitch Marner. The Leafs went to Mitch Marner and said, hey, we have to bring this to you. Mitch Marner said, no, I'm not waiving my no trade clause. Realistically, I know why the Leafs did this, and it's very interesting because, Marner's in the final year of his deal, and he's not willing to negotiate. So, if I'm the Leafs, I totally get this because he's going to walk in free agency, and I'd be shocked if he stays with the Maple Leaf organization. So, hats off to the Leafs for trying to bring in Rantanen because at the end of the season, I feel like they're going to have neither. So, yeah, it's just the whole take of it is going to be really. It's don't trade your star players mid-season. It's just absolute and utter chaos.
Now, one of the best stories from this season, not only for the Kraken, but really it impacts the NHL and sports world at large, has to be the impact of Coach Jess Campbell that she has made. Aside from her work behind the bench, you'll often see clips of her making time for fans with signing autographs, signing jerseys, or handing out friendship bracelets to young kids on the other side of the boards. On Saturday, to recognize International Women's Day, L'Oreal Paris released an ad featuring Coach Jess sharing her powerful message. Here's a little clip for you.
Saying you just got lucky. Do you listen? I don't. Because when we drown out the noise and give it all we've got, we can finally hear the voice inside, loud and clear.
And if you wanted to see the full thing, and I encourage you to, head on over to Coach Jess Campbell's Instagram account @Soupy08 and watch the whole thing. It's just a great message from her, which we love to see. So we had some San Jose Sharks shenanigans last week. Before Tuesday's game against Buffalo, Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini made a bet with Tyler Toffoli that if all three players scored in the same game, that Toffoli would have to sleep over in their hotel room. Sure enough, they all scored and posted on socials that night a picture of the three of them in the same room with Toffoli on a fold-out cot. Little surprised there wasn't a blanket fort being made or anything like that, but it's good spirits of Tyler Toffoli there to follow through on that wager. We have a milestone alert for Sidney Crosby. In last Sunday's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Penguins captain recorded 2 assists, and with these, Sidney has now cracked the top 10 for all-time NHL assists, now trailing Steve Yzerman. In a story that we've loved to follow all season long, the PWHL Takeover Tour had one more stop this week in Raleigh, North Carolina, with the Ottawa Charge battling the Boston Fleet. The turnout for the game was 10,782 fans, with the fans seeing a final score of 5-0 for Minnesota, putting up the shutout win. Next week, the tour moves to Detroit, and there's only a couple more stops left, so we will see what happens there. Now, to close it out, we always close with Ovi Record Watch. This one maybe stings a little bit because it came at the expense of the Seattle Kraken, but Alexander Ovechkin now sits at 886 goals, only 9 away from beating Wayne Gretzky's record of 894. He needs to do this in 12 or less games to accomplish the feat faster than Gretzky did, and there are a few extra achievements that came with his goal today against the Kraken, as Ovi became the 11th player in NHL history to reach 1,600 points, and is the 7th player to do this with only one team. Now, in an awesome spin on this race that came out over this week, Ovechkin announced that he has partnered with Hockey Fights Cancer and the V Foundation for Cancer Research to kick off the Great 8 Chase for Victory Over Cancer. Beginning with last Wednesday night's game against the New York Rangers, Ovechkin will donate a dollar amount equal to his career goal total for every goal he scores for the remainder of his NHL career. Now, I did not say until he reaches the record. He said for the remainder of his NHL career, which is just an absolutely amazing gesture. Now, to make this even sweeter, Ovechkin's donations will be matched by the Monumental Sports and Entertainment Group, which is the ownership group for the Washington Capitals. Again, amazing gesture from Ovi, making an impact on his pursuit of history. And that concludes this week's Sound Table. Heather, would you like to let the folks know what our week ahead looks like?
I would love to. So the Kraken play Wednesday, March 12th versus the Montreal Canadiens. And if you're going to the game, it is Joey Bobblehead night. So get there early. And also, John Forsland today said that the game was pushed back to 7:30. So just a heads up there. It was a 7 start, but now it's 7:30. So super late for our East Coast friends, unfortunately. Then they play Friday, March 14th versus the Utah Hockey Club. And this is actually Women in Hockey night. So they have a special ticket that will get you a really beautiful tote bag. So if you're going to that game, just make sure you check out the special tickets for that. And then the Kraken play Sunday, March 16th versus the Winnipeg Jets. And that means Brandon Tanev will make his return to Seattle.
Yeah, Heather, I am going to that game in person, so it'll be a little bittersweet. I was excited to go to a game without Tanev there, but yeah, I'm not escaping him, I guess.
Nope, you're going to see him.
He's going to score.
And Derek, could you let the people know where they can find us online this week?
Absolutely, Matt. But first, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube and head on over to bit.ly/BTW store. We just added in our The Price is Right collection. It's absolutely amazing. And we have so many cool designs there now. It's nice to see the store start to flesh out and develop and just see all the people, ordering stuff. It's great. Please drop a follow wherever you're listening to this. And if you would, so kindly, please leave a 5-star review on the podcast app of your choice when you're listening to this thing. And if you're wondering where to find us on any of our social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X, YouTube, whatever, anything, I'll leave you with this. To be or not to be? That is the question. The answer, my friends, is TWSEA. All right, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
We going beneath the waves. Going beneath the waves.